Mojo Loop Testing Toolkit. It can be used for validating the switch deployments. The tests are blazing fast, and you can see the difference in speed over Postman tests. Let's see how it works. Suppose this is a Mojo Loop switch, and here is the testing toolkit. From the testing toolkit, we can send outbound FSP IoT API requests to the Mojo Loop switch and can get the callbacks for those requests. These callbacks are asynchronous. Because testing toolkit is listening on a particular port, it could get these callbacks. Let's have a look at various methods of deployment to validate a Mojo Loop switch. Testing toolkit is part of the Mojo Loop Helm chart from version 12.0.0. That means you can get testing toolkit by default if you use Helm chart to deploy your Mojo Loop instance. There are two scenarios we can think of to deploy the testing toolkit here. First, we can use the testing toolkit deployed automatically with the Mojo Loop deployment. Second, we can deploy the testing toolkit outside the Mojo Loop cluster. In this case, we need to configure the endpoints properly. Let's see how to run the test suites. You can find a menu item here, Test Runner. Click on that. This is the page where you can execute your test suites. First, you have to load a collection from the collection manager here. Click on that. This is the collection manager. You can import the test cases from your local machine. Click on the import folder here and select a folder of your choice. Test cases will be imported into the workspace. To execute the test cases, you can select any folder you want. That folder will be loaded and it is ready to run. And you can also import the test cases from the hosted GitHub repository. Click on Import from GitHub button here. You can browse through all the test cases in the repository. And you can select a folder to download. The folder will be downloaded and you can click on Import to Workspace button here. The folder from GitHub is here and you can select that to get it loaded. So this is about collection manager in the test runner. After importing a test collection, we need to import the environment. We can use the environment manager using the button here. This is the environment manager. We can import a local environment JSON file. Click on Import File button and select an environment here. Then you can select the imported file here that sets the current environment. And you can see the values here. If you want, you can change the values and download a new copy using the download button here. And also we can import sample environments from the server. Click on the Import from Server button here and select an environment to load. That will be imported and set as current environment. You can do other operations like delete, duplicate, and rename using this environment manager. Let's run the test suites. You can see the test cases are loaded and the environment is selected here. To start the execution, you can find the Run button here. By clicking on it, the test case execution will be initiated. And it shows the progress of the execution. The numbers you see here are the assertion counts. Let's open a test case and observe the test results. Here you can notice that there are 10 assertions. You can see all the assertions here, and you can see the synchronous response and asynchronous callbacks in this tab. You can see all these details in a consolidated HTML report. Download the HTML report. The report is downloaded. Let's open it. This is the report. You can see the summary of the execution, and also we can dig the details if we want. Click on the details tab here. It gives all the minute details like test cases, requests, responses, callbacks, and assertions. So this is about test case execution. Now let's see how to create a test case in the testing toolkit. We can start with a fresh collection. Let's create a new folder for our test cases. Create a new folder here. It asks whether you want to delete the existing workspace. After confirming that, you will see a new folder here. And then you need to create a JSON file which holds our test cases. Enter the name, for example, positive scenarios.json. And also you can rename this folder like a group name or something. Then select the file in which you want to create the test cases. Close the collection manager. Then you can add a test case here. Enter a name like quotes. The test case is created, and we need to add requests in that. Click on the edit button here and add a new request. Specify a name for the request. For example, make a quote. Then the request is created. And you need to go to Editor tab here. Choose the API and resource from the drop-down list here. Now you can see some details are populated. There are multiple options here. We can come to these later. Let's have a look at the headers of this request. If we want to add some required headers, we can click on this button. This populates the required headers automatically based on the Swagger file. And we can enter the values here. If we want to include some value from the environment file, you can click on configurable param button here and select input values, and then you can choose the values from the list. You can copy this syntax and paste it here. Then immediately you can see the value in that from the environment variable. You can also add other headers from the Swagger definition or a custom header of your choice. Let's look at the body of this request. We can enter a JSON body in this text box. If we want to look at the format of the body, click on the populate with sample body button. That populates the sample body of this resource based on the Swagger file. Now we can change the values we want. Here also we can use the configurable parameters like I showed it in the headers section. In the same way, we can add other data like query parameters and path parameters. Now let's have a look at the options we have here. There is an option called override with custom URL. If we want to send this request to a URL other than the URL configured in the testing toolkit, then we can use this option. We need to provide the base URL here. Then ignore callbacks. If we don't want to wait for the asynchronous callback, we should enable this option. And we can specify some delay before sending this request using this option. Let's see how to send this test case and make assertions on the response. I provided all the necessary data like body and the headers for a post quotes call. Let's send this request and observe the response. So we got synchronous HTTP response as well as the asynchronous callback. Now we can create assertions based on this information. Go to Test tab here. Click on Add New Assertion. I want to check the response status. Then click on Add Expectation. Response status should be equal to 200. I want to check that. Let's send this test case again. And you can see the assertion status is failed. If you hover it, you can see the error message that it expected 202, but we are comparing it with 200. So you can see the status is 202 here. Let's change that and send it again. Now it is success. We can also create assertions on the callbacks. All we need to do is select the callback and select the element of your choice. So this is the quote request. If we want to use this callback in the following requests, then let's see how to do that. I created a transfer request here. You can see the editor. I filled all the necessary information like headers and body. And for these three fields of the transfer request, we need to pass the value from the quotes callback. So how to do that? Click on the configurable parameter here. Click on previous response and select the request. I want to get a response from the quotes request. Then select the appropriate element. So this is the syntax. Copy that and paste it here. And you can do that in the same way with ILP packet and condition. So let's send this test case again. And you can see the request of the post transfers first. The values here are replaced already. Expiration, ILP packet and the condition. And go to response tab and we got committed transfer state. Now let's have a look at the advanced scripting in a test case. For sending simple requests and making assertions on the responses, it is simple and very straightforward. But for the advanced users, we can use the scripts in the test cases. Let's open a test case and see how the scripts look like. Go to the scripts tab here. There are two options, JavaScript and Postman script. Postman script is deprecated in the testing toolkit and we encourage you to use JavaScript option. And then There are two levels of scripts here, pre-request and post-request scripts. Pre-request script is executed before sending the request and post-request script is executed after getting the callback in case of asynchronous APIs and after getting the response in case of synchronous APIs. There are several functions available to be used in the scripting here. You can go through the documentation in the testing toolkit repository. If we observe here, we want to assign the value like a date plus an offset to a variable. Let's see the script in the next request. Here we are assigning a value to an environment variable so that we can access that variable in the following test cases. There are some functions related to JWS signing and validation. If we see the scripts in the first request, you can notice that we want to sign the request with a JWS key. So this is the JWS related function. We can use it in the scripts. And in the post request script, here we want to validate the JWS signature of the callback with a JWS public key. And we want this to be happened only if the environment variable is set. Another interesting feature is WebSocket client functionality. If we are using SDK scheme adapter as a PE simulator, we can get the request received by the simulator using WebSocket connections. So we don't need to wait for the certain time, ask the simulator about the data received, like in Postman. You can see the functions related to WebSocket here and also in the pre-request. Now let's see the iteration functionality. Suppose this is a P2P happy path test case and I got 100% pass. I want to run this multiple times to check the consistency, and also I want to measure the average time taken for the P2P transfer against my switch. We can do that with the iteration runner here. Let's open it, specify the count here, and start execution. It will give you average runtime duration, and also you can download the reports for each iteration. There is a command line client for the testing toolkit. We can use this to execute the test cases without a web interface. It can be used in the CI/CD and for the automation. Let's have a look at it. This is the help screen of the CLI client. There are several options here. We can pass test case files with -i option here and environment file with -e option. And we should point this client to the backend testing toolkit service with -u option. Let's run a test case and see the results. You can see the command here. I specified -u, -i, and -e options. Let's run this test case. The test case is executed and the total assertions are 38 and passed assertions are 38. And also we can see the test case names and request names here. We can specify -l option for the log level. Let's specify that to 2 and execute the test again. Now we can see the assertions level log. So we can see all the assertion names and the results. There are some advanced capabilities in this client. First one is S3 integration. We can specify the AWS S3 bucket information and the client can upload the test report to that bucket after the test run. Second one is Slack integration. We can specify the Slack webhook URL to get notifications after the test run.